I've got a few questions for you. What if we are losing money because of high absenteeism? How to determine the impact of engagement? How to deal with your staffing problem? You can utilize analytics to help you answer these kinds of questions. Let's take a look.
Welcome to this lesson titled 11 Examples of Analytics Cases. In this lesson we'll discuss some common analytics examples. Let's start with the first problem. As an organization, we're losing our talent. Talent retention is very important for both HR and for the organization. And employee turnover or employee churn could be a big problem. But it's only a problem if it's about unwanted turnover. There are two types of turnover. You have wanted turnover or a desired turnover. That's when people who don't really perform well leave the organization. That's not too bad. However, you also have unwanted turnover. That's when the high performers in your organization are moving away. And that's something you want to prevent. Now, interestingly, I saw a presentation by a large tech company, and what they did was they analyzed employee turnover. Every factor that they identified as a driver of people quitting had to do with performance. And in fact, the biggest driver, they had a top 10 list, and all 10 of them had to do with, for example, the number of sales calls or the number of conversions or a performance rating by the manager, performance rating by peers. Those were the kind of factors that triggered people to leave. And they concluded that they could accurately predict turnover. But when I asked the question, hey, did you track unwanted turnover or did you track all turnover? They said, we don't really have unwanted turnover, so we tracked all turnover. So what this company did is they actually tracked wanted turnover. They found that when people didn't perform well, they quit because they didn't get their bonuses or they had to exit the company, and they were able to predict this very well. Now, of course, this is not really relevant for a company, because if turnover is not a problem, if you only have wanted turnover, you shouldn't do a turnover analysis. So the focus should be on unwanted turnover. And the good thing is that for the last 100 years, there's been a lot of research to the drivers of turnover. They're really well recorded. And the article I mentioned in the slide is a meta-analysis from about 10 years ago that has condensed all that scientific research into one article that lists all the factors why people leave. For example, factors like travel distance, a kinship responsibility, number of children, which is of course related, marital status, etc. All those factors can be identified as drivers of turnover. There are three kinds of analysis that you can do based on employee turnover. The first one is insight and seeing what percentage of turnover is wanted versus which percentage is unwanted. The second is a driver analysis. What is driving people to move away? This is information you can communicate to the manager and that you can build interventions on. And the third is a flight risk analysis. You can analyze which people have the highest flight risk, the highest risk of leaving within now and a certain period, and you can intervene to maintain those people. Now, the most important business outcome in this case is cost. Especially recruitment cost. It takes a lot of money to recruit high quality people. Onboarding costs, when you have new people, they need to be onboarded, they have lower productivity. So cost and lost productivity are the most important business outcomes. And of course, there's the case of Credit Suisse that saved, I think it was about $70 million per year by reducing turnover. And the Wall Street Journal published an article about that a number of years ago. So knowing where turnover takes place, knowing the drivers so you can intervene, and knowing what risks specific people have of quitting, all that information can help you lower turnover significantly and in the end solve this issue. Now let's go to the second problem. We're losing money because of high absence. Absenteeism is often well recorded and often categorized in short, mid and long-term absenteeism. For example, when someone has a burnout and is absent for a few months, that's long-term absenteeism. And depending on the country and on local regulation, these terms may or may not be predefined. Now, the simplest way to add value and to reduce absenteeism is by analyzing where absenteeism takes place. The fact that a manager is aware that absenteeism in his department is very high is already a trigger for him or her to start working on solving absenteeism. So just reporting it, creating a heat map, can already provide insights that's needed to reduce it. There are a number of drivers for absenteeism, and especially for long-term absenteeism, you see that short-term absence is predicting long-term absence. When someone is ill for 3 or 4 periods within a certain time frame, their likelihood of becoming long-term absent or getting a burnout or those kinds of symptoms is increased significantly. Now, second, there's often a lot of survey data in engagement reports about mental health, about physical health, about sports activities, etc. that can influence and drive absence or the level of healthiness within the organization. And of course, with modern inputs on the quantified self, how many steps do you take, from when till when did you sleep, what's the local weather in your area, those are also factors that can help you predict the absence in a certain time period. And this could, for example, help with planning activities, so you always have the right people, the right amount of people in the right place. But the most important business outcome is usually in cost, it's in reducing absenteeism. When someone is not working, it's almost a one-to-one relationship that the money you pay the person is also the money that you're losing. So the business outcome of absenteeism or lowering absenteeism is lower cost and higher productivity in the end. The third problem is, how do I effectively build capabilities for my people? And this is really when we're talking about training effectiveness. And when you talk about training effectiveness, the Kirkpatrick model that you see here on the slide is probably the best known way to explain and to measure training effectiveness. The Kirkpatrick model is divided in 4 stages. First of all, you have the reaction. When someone goes to a training, they have an initial reaction, like the quality of the educator, the quality of the material, and usually also the quality of the lunch. So that's an initial reaction of how well the training is received. Now, in the second step, you have learning. Was the information effectively absorbed, and can it be recalled later on? So, after someone has followed the training, you give the person a test and you see, hey, did they actually learn something from it? And did they gather knowledge? Now, the third step is from knowledge towards behavior. In the end, you want to change something with your training program. So, how much has training influenced behavior of participants? And is the knowledge or are the skills being applied in the job of the person? And the fourth, the ultimate step of measuring results in training is, has the training impacted at the business level? For example, if you have a number of shops and you send part of the people to training A and part of the people to training B and part of the people to no training at all, you want to see in the end a difference in sales in the shop or in customer satisfaction after the training compared to before the training. So the big question is my training program effective? You can do it through A/B testing, where you have 2 different groups or 3 different groups like I just described that follow different programs. Or you can have a baseline intervention testing setup where you track people for a longer time, then you give them the training and you see, hey, is there a difference in performance? And if you build that experiment the right way, you can quite accurately track the impact of the training. Training effectiveness should be related to concrete business or productivity results. For example, sales records, a standardized peer feedback system, work effectiveness or efficiency standards or measures. Those kinds of data you want to have as an outcome variable in your analysis to see how effective your training really is. In this case, the business outcome is usually related to productivity and cost. Problem 4 is about the impact of engagement. A lot of organizations do engagement research. This could be once a year, twice a year, once every 2 years. And the big question is, what is now the business impact of engagement? And that's something you want to analyze, because why would you track engagement if it's not making an impact on the business? It's really nice if you want to focus on the 2 items that score really low and the next year they score higher and you focus on 2 other items. But you really want to focus on the drivers, on the items that have the most business impact. And that might not be the drivers that or the items that score the lowest. Secondly, engagement is a bit of an annoying topic when you apply it to the HR value chain, because it's related to both business outcomes and HR outcomes. And examples of HR outcomes are performance, absenteeism, and retention. But the nicest thing is that engagement surveys usually offer a very structured way of tracking what the drivers are, because those are the individual items or the individual questions in your survey. They enable you to measure overall engagement and relate it to HR outcomes. and it enables you to relate it to business impact, to business outcomes. This means that a single engagement survey can give you a lot of information about how you can manage your people in a better way. Problem number 5. My departments are losing productivity because they're understaffed. Or alternatively, I'm spending too much money because my departments are overstaffed. And you have a staffing problem and you think, hey, I think some departments might be overstaffed or understaffed. This is reducing efficiency and in the end, costing the business money. So what you want to do to tackle this is to measure business activity and plot it versus the different staffing levels. Now the thing you want to do is for your different teams to measure business activities, how effective are these teams in reaching their goals, and plot them versus staffing levels. And you'll see that some teams reach results with lower staffing levels and that other teams reach those results with higher staffing levels. And if you compare those business activities per month or per quarter, you can start to find an optimum level. And the way to do that is to use regression analysis, that's something we'll talk about later in this course, to determine a relationship between staffing levels and business activities. The case study for this example is written by Al.Gizawy. He wrote about how we determined optimum staffing levels, and I attached this article in the material below. Now this is the analysis that he did. He had a number of employees and it's a small graph of some of the results. They had relative business activities and based on this regression line they could calculate the number of technicians needed to achieve a certain business result based on the business activity. I would say read the article, is very, very interesting. They found an R squared of 70.3%. That means that the number of people working in a team and business activities are very strongly related. Do read the article if you want to know more about this. Now the next problem is we're not recruiting the right people. In academic writing about recruitment optimization, there's something called utility analysis. The utility analysis is all about calculating the total utility of adding or removing certain assessments. As you know, if you take for example an IQ test or you do a personality test, based on those tests, on those assessments, you can predict performance to a certain degree. Now when these tests are combined, you can make an even better decision. Now depending on the people you're hiring, adding those tests and making better recruitment decisions, more data-driven recruitment decisions, they can earn you a lot of money. And this is calculated by using the validity of the test, so in a sense the quality of the test, the standard deviation of job performance. For some jobs the standard deviation is high, which means that if you hire the right people, they'll perform much better and earn you a lot more money than for other jobs. Selection ratio and testing cost. Now if you combine those 4 factors in a model, you can calculate quite accurately what the utility of adding different tests is, and this is a way of optimizing your recruitment process in the end to make more money. It's related to the business outcome profit, it's related to the business outcome cost. The next problem is, are we paying our staff enough? It's about compensation and benefit. Compensation and benefit analysis is very interesting because usually there's already a lot of data out there. Based on your internal data, you can quantify which people you're overpaying and which people you're underpaying, and you can see how that relates to their job performance. Additionally, you can also look at market data. There's a lot of market data out there which looks at, are you overpaying your staff in general, or are you underpaying your staff in general? Leveraging salary data of the market in general will help you predict things like retention. For example, if you're underpaying people, they're more likely to leave because they can get more money working for someone else. And of course, the main business outcome in this case is cost. These days, diversity is often part of the strategic goals of an organization. They want to be more diverse. When we are talking about diversity and data, we're talking about graces, as Max Bloomberg calls it. Gender, race, religion, disability or ability, age, culture, ethnicity, and sexuality. As an organization, you really want to be diverse on those areas. Now, the simplest way to do it is to map out diversity in the organization and use historic data and patterns to predict future diversity. If you're straying off track, you can create a number of interventions to stay on track. A big problem, especially in Europe, is privacy regulation. You can't track all data, and data like race, religion, disability, ethnicity, sexuality, you really can't track that data. So that makes tracking diversity very, very tricky. If you want to know more about this specific problem, about privacy, especially in Europe, read the article attached below. It's written by an international lawyer about the impact of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, in Europe on HR data. I would really recommend this article. Read it if you want to know more about privacy and the latest in the European Union. Now, problem 9 is our teams are too large. And this is similar to over and understaffing that we just spoke about. Team size has to do with span of control. How many people can a manager manage and still be effective? And it's quite easy to relate this to productivity for individuals and team. So you take the team size and you relate it to the productivity of a manager and of the individuals in the team. You would analyze this through a regression analysis and you would control for certain demographic variables. Now the next problem is my talent is leaving in the first year. Or alternatively, we're not growing fast enough, or a number of related problems that have to do with people leaving in their first year. Now this is everything to do with onboarding effectiveness. If you don't onboard effectively, it will lead to lowered retention and it will cost you 5 to 21% of annual compensation for that specific person. Connected employees will perform much better. So what you want to do to solve this is to connect new hires to the hubs, to the social hubs in your social networks. Traditionally this has been done through a mentor, but these days with data you can optimize this, you can help people connect in an even better way by connecting them to the people that are most relevant for their specific function, and the best way to do this is through organizational network analysis. Social networks play, research shows this again and again, a pivotal role in onboarding speed. And if you do this well, you can onboard way faster. That can reduce onboarding time with multiple months. Onboarding effectiveness can be an analysis that can help you get your people up to speed faster. Now problem 11, and this was a problem I spoke about with one of our customers at Analytics and HR, was that someone said, my ships need to reach their destination faster. Now this CEO had a number of very interesting metrics. It's about a shipping company, as you might understand. Those ships are very expensive to maintain. The cost of travel is very high. So traveling speed, traveling distance, everything needs to be optimized. And he had a number of team outcomes like average travel speed in knots per day, speed related to previous journeys, so you could make a benchmark and say, hey, we usually ship in 5 days, and if you do it in 4 days and 20 hours, you're actually quite a bit faster. So you have a relative benchmark. The number of hours to resolve certain incidents on board, the number of safety incidents or accidents. Those were a number of success metrics for different teams. And what they actually had was they tracked team roles for their crews. And using data, they were able to optimize the team composition for their ships. And this was related to a number of very hard and tangible financial outcomes. And it saved the company in the end quite some money. Anyway, these are 11 examples of analytics cases that I just wanted to give you some information about. First of all, what do they mean? Why are they important? How do you go about tackling them? Etc.